In today's video, we have Candace Owens versus a woke clown army. Never thought I'd say that. My name is Griffin, this is my mind. Stay on the path of progress, and let's get into this one.
So, I'm going to bring up something that you previously had said in the past, but you also brought up again in this speech, so it is relevant. You had talked about climate cooling. Well, actually, wait, before I do, I wish for your health, your continued health, the health of your husband and children.
Thank you, it's very sweet.
I just want that. I'd always try to start with that. You had said to Bill Maher on Club Random about climate cooling, and you again brought that up. And Bill pushed back on that, rightfully so, about how climate cooling wasn't ever really used in a large academic sense or a governmental sense. So I was just wondering if you would be able to tell me like any level of citation where that climate cooling comes into context outside of the geological formation of volcanoes, which does cause a climate cooling effect due to the ash coming into the atmosphere, causing extreme extermination events.
So I'm not able to provide you a citation because I'm on stage holding a microphone. What I said to you is that if you speak to people of prior generations, they'll tell you that their scare was different. I think it was the generation of the 70s who were told that the climate was going to cool and that freezing was a risk. Now, I can't tell you what happened in their classrooms. Obviously, I wasn't in there, but I can tell you that I bet if you asked around to some adults, they would tell you that they heard, there's some nodding their head right now, about global cooling. So I don't know what else to tell you other than people say that that was their scare in the 1970s. I wasn't making a defense for cooling or warming. I was just telling you that every time you are in a classroom and you're in high school, there's always a different climate scare that they're trying to tell you, and they've now finally landed on in your generation climate change. So I'm not, debating you on cooling. I can just tell you that they got it wrong, and then the earth started warming, and then they got it wrong again because the earth started cooling, and now they've landed on climate change. So I hope that clarifies what I was talking about, just the generational change. Thank you.
So that's the first of three. This is literally a clown world. The joke actually writes itself. You dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. And these people dressed as, they're clowns, bro. Like, actually straight up. Move on to clown two.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So you like to learn, right? What did you learn from the Christchurch mosque shooting where 51 people died at the hands of someone who is influenced by you above all other people? How did you change your rhetoric after this person shot 51 people?
Great question. So what she is referencing, one of the craziest media firestorms I've ever been in my life, in New Zealand is what she's talking about. There was a mosque shooting, and at 51, I'll take your number for it, people lost their lives. And apparently, and I actually haven't followed up on the story because I've never been to New Zealand. I don't talk about mosques. I don't talk about Muslims, so it would be very weird if this would have anything to do with me. But apparently, they said that there was an online manifesto. I don't even know if that was officially attributed or if that was just early press. But they found a manifesto of the shooter online somewhere. Again, this was alleged early. I don't know if they've since debunked that. And apparently, the person listed Nelson Mandela as his #1 inspiration, alongside Spyro the Dragon, which I believe is a child's cartoon, Spyro the Dragon. Maybe it's a video game, I don't know. And Candace Owens. Yeah, I didn't feel like there was a lesson other than people are crazy, and we shouldn't give credence to homicidal maniacs when they're putting together cartoons and people that fought against apartheid plus a random American in their thought processes. So I learned that that was clearly an ill person, and that any person who believed or gave credence to a manifesto should probably re-examine why that is. That's what I learned. Thank you very much for your question. Next.
You'll notice this a lot, actually, of people attributing the actions of the minority to the majority. This is something I see on my end as well. A common stat that I'll say is that 80% of women initiate most of the divorces. And then you'll read comments, it's like, oh, well, not all women initiate all the divorces. It's like, yeah, I know. In general, women initiate divorce. That's what the 80% means. That's the majority. And this person is doing the exact same thing. Oh, well, this one terrible person did this awful thing and he named you. You could say that basically about anyone. Anyone that has an ounce of an audience probably has a couple crazies in there. It's a disingenuous argument. On to clown 3.
You said that
sex ed effectively sexualize children, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had ever heard of the case in Delaware, close to where you're from in Connecticut, where a 10-year-old girl was able to finally tell her mother that she was being sexually abused by her father because she was able to learn sex ed from the It's Perfectly Normal book. Would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So one example does not mean that it impacts the majority at large. I would very much like to believe and know that the majority of people are not 10 years old being, sexually molested by their parents. What you're doing right now is pretty much what the government does. They find one extreme example and try to make everybody fearful that this is going on all the time. This is actually how they introduced sex ed. Everybody's just doing it, and that actually wasn't true. It's never in everybody. Can you find a somebody? Sure. What is the goal of government? Is there ever going to be something that's perfect? Can you create perfect laws? There's always going to be exceptions. You got to create the rule. You can't have the rule based on exceptions. There are exceptional things that happen all the time. If we said that, one person who got their license when they were age 21 got into a wreck on the day that they got their license, well, so nobody's allowed to get their license, that would be crazy. It's crazy. You have to talk about what the majority is. You have to talk about the majority percentage of experiences. And it is a fact that within 10 years after introducing sex education, the stats completely flipped and the majority of kids were graduating without their virginity, as opposed to prior to that when it was a very different society. Also, which you could say had an impact was that we used to teach the Bible at school. Like, people were basically, Christian. There was a lot more Christianity in the classroom, and that got removed after some lawsuits. I believe that was in the mid-'60s that went all the way to the Supreme Court. But again, the goal of a government is to govern for the whole, not the fringe minority of circumstances that happen. Doesn't make them any less sad or any less awful, but you can't then base laws and everything that you're doing on them. Hope that helps.
And this clown does exactly the same thing as the last one. You guys might think I'm saying clown as an insult, but literally a clown. I can't get over that. That way of thinking is just so incredibly flawed to me. But she does the same thing, attributing one story to the masses. And Candace shuts him down pretty easy. Clown 0, Candace 3. W.
Point was we are the same. There's an entire show called ID Channel, a network dedicated 24 hours a day to women getting abused, murdered, sexualized, and violated. And you are too, sister.
And trans
it's
women
the
go through
same.
domestic violence, and you do nothing for them. Trans women are in men's prisons. And what have you done for them?
What have you done for women?
Lots of things.
I've done lots of things too. You don't know my life. Don't sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Enough. Get lost.
I am a woman, and trans women.
Congratulations. So am I.
This is the genocide. This is the AIDS crisis all over again. And this is white, cis, feminism.
Shut up. You're so boring.
White, cis, feminism.
Don't label me, sister. Don't put your labels on me. Don't you f***ing do that.
Don't worry about her.
Do not put your label on me. I don't come from your planet. Leave me alone. I do not subscribe to your rules.
Why do I like my boyfriend to call me boyfriend and use he, him pronouns for me when those aren't my pronouns and I don't identify as a trans man or as a boy? Well, some trans individuals may wish to use pronouns or certain terms and language which relates to a gender identity even though they don't identify with it because it affirms their identity. So for me, I like more masculine in words or masculine in language because feminine in words and feminine language makes me feel uncomfortable. So the opposite makes me feel comfortable. However, I don't want to identify as a trans man because I don't feel like a trans man. I'm non-binary, I know I'm non-binary, but that doesn't mean I can't use gendered language to affirm my identity. Which is why he will use he, him for me casually, and also will use boyfriend when referring to me. But that doesn't mean that other people should use he, him when referring to me. It's just kind of like our little thing. And that is completely okay for trans individuals to do.
What? Huh? Who? Where? When? What? How? They? Them? What? I want y'all to take a second, and can you actually imagine trying to be friends with this person? Like, actually interacting with them on a daily basis. It's like you have to solve a Rubik's Cube every time you want to talk to them. You're setting up so many barriers just to interact with you. And for what exactly? So you feel more comfortable? So you feel more special?
Do you feel that, like, free speech is free for everybody in terms of Western society? And at what point does free speech no longer become free?
What do you mean, at what point does it become no longer become free?
Some rhetoric can be harmful to other communities.
Can you give give me an example. It's always easier to, you know, answer a question if
so
I
like
have a...
what I know we all are aware of what happened on campus last year.
I'm not.
Great, look it up. So it was just involving the feeling of LGBTQ members of the community feeling unsafe with rhetoric that's being shared in terms of transphobia.
Like what? Like if you're a man, I need an example. And someone, like if you're a biological man, and someone says, "Hey, what's up, dude?" Yeah, I mean, the idea that if somebody looks at a man and calls him a man, that they're suddenly unsafe because they've created a false reality in their own head. Yeah, I don't abide by that. I think this is what's really happening is that we are celebrating mental disorders in America right now.
So much trans hate in the world right now, and I'm so done with it. And pride just means that we are unabashedly happy just to be alive.
Yeah. And where do you personally feel that hate is coming from?
Most places, but especially the government.
And in your own life, where would you say that you feel the hate the most?
I feel like I kind of internalize a lot of the hate, so it feels like it mostly comes from myself at this point because...
That is a very telling clip. That's the thing. This dude asked just 3 simple questions, just using pure logic. Okay, how did you get to the root of your thinking? Then you actually get to the root of the issue, because she's actually answering quite genuinely. You dig just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit, and you get to the issue. Self-loathing. And that's what you'll see with so much of this. It has nothing to do with actually what's going on. It basically has everything to do with logic versus emotion, and that's it. That's what you'll notice about all of these clips. It's people being in their logic and people being in their emotions.
Well, 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 if it isn't the best 3-dressed lady and male. None of it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry.
Interviews from the New York Times. You know there's only 2 genders, right? There's only 2 genders, and they know that in Iowa. I challenge the New York Times reporter and the Washington Post reporter to try to milk a cow and then try to milk a bull and see how that goes.
Take into account the fact that on average a male full-time employee works longer hours than a female full-time employee?
Not directly, no. But we annualise the part-time hours and those that have worked full-time but for part of the year.
What about if you did on an hourly rate? What would be the gender hourly pay gap?
We don't have that data set.
You don't? Okay, so if a woman was working fewer hours but earning the same rate per hour as a man doing the same job, would that show up as a gender pay gap?
Women.